Welcome to ZOOMERTIMES TV. And here's your host, Anita Finley.
Good morning, everyone. I am so glad and feel so proud to have Harvey Wolinetz not in our studio, but on ZOOMERTIMES TV, because Harvey he's a unique individual. He's done something that I don't think another human being has done, which is a rare thing to say nowadays. But I'm going to put the Synagogue Stamps book, an international postage tour of synagogues, up on the screen so you can see this. We featured his book. I mean, it's heavy. I can't hold it up. It's heavy. And we featured it in our Boomer Times magazine, and it was in our March issue. We wrote a review, and it's one of those, it's a unique book. And nowadays, there are very few unique books. But this is special, and this didn't just happen. So I'm going to let Harvey kind of tell you how this all came about, what it is, because he does it better than I. Good morning, Harvey.
Well, I started collecting stamps when I was about 6 years old, when my next door neighbor gave me a present of a stamp album and some stamps. But I was just, you amassed it, really. You don't collect, you're amassing something. But eventually it grew into where I started focusing more on Judaica. And eventually I became very interested in Israel. I traveled to Israel, especially after the 6-Day War, where you could go to Jerusalem and everything else. So I then started focusing on certain Judaica. And I guess it just evolved into one of the topics was the synagogues. And I ended up with a good collection, and I just started focusing on getting what I could. I guess one of the biggest topics on quote synagogues, depending on how you define it, would be the Western Wall, which is technically is the remains of a part of a synagogue, the mountain and everything, but it's become a big area of prayer. More people praying than any place else.
Right.
So, and a lot of stamps now put out by a lot of countries. And what I found doing the book, I learned a lot. And that's always the key. Not trying to teach somebody by writing a book. I learned from writing the book. And it really gave me insights into the synagogues and the history of synagogues and what it meant to the Jewish communities and how it represented the Jewish communities. Many times in tragic ways, unfortunately, because it became the symbol of the Jewish community and it was the first place attacked. And you see in the book, especially like Kristallnacht, what the Nazis, Yamach Shema, what they did, they burned down synagogue after synagogue. But it didn't work. They can't wipe us out. We manage it. And the synagogues give us a tremendous history. And they give us a tremendous history, even for this current Arab-Israeli conflict, believe it or not, just through the synagogue, because it shows we were there. We can prove a 3,000-year presence in Gaza. A lot longer than the Palestinians were there, boy, because we had synagogues there.
But let me ask you a question. The book shows beautiful architecture of synagogues. Where did that come from? They found architects, it took money. How did that all, why? I would always think it would be like a little tent or something when it started, but it wasn't.
I thought that the synagogues copied the churches and the mosques, but I think a lot of cases it was the reverse. We had architects who designed the synagogues, and the churches and the mosques copied that kind of architecture from us. Look, the first synagogue was a moving synagogue, the tabernacle, that started when the Jews left Egypt. And they brought that with them. They put it up
synagogue, right?
They took it down and they put it back up again when they got the next stop that they were going to stop at. That was the first. And then you had the major one was, of course, King Solomon when he built the temple in Jerusalem. Lasted hundreds of years. And then after that, wherever there was a Jewish community organized around, because we were exiled all over the place. Nobody wanted it. Everybody kicked us out. Wherever the Jewish community sat down and got together, it didn't take long. They built a synagogue. Sometimes maybe a small one, but else they built big ones. And they found the way around some of the restrictions too, as Jews do. They couldn't build a synagogue higher than a church if it was in the same area. So how did they get all the space they needed? They started 3 stories down, went up above ground, They equal the height of the church. Below, they were way down. So,
Well, that,
very,
you
very
know, that's so interesting because I have never talked to somebody about this. And that's why I love when you come on our interviews, you do enlighten us. And I just wanted to share something with people, though, who are sitting there. I just wanted to open up the book a little bit. You can't see too much, but just to give you an example, the architecture in these are actually stamps.
Yeah, what page are you on? What page?
I'm on now page 136. I mean, that is so beautiful inside. I mean, look at the
Yes.
ceiling. I just can't get over that. And so this is then, then you see the stamp too. And this was where the Pincus Synagogue built in 1536.
Right.
And it was in the Czech Republic. I mean,
Yep.
this is so okay. So now, how did you get something like that? Where did you find that?
Well, started working from the stamp. One of the big benefits of living in the time that we live in now is you go online, everything you can find information put together. You have to dig a little bit and sort it out, but the information, a lot of it is online. And I had the stamps. I had a lot of the stamps. And from the stamps, that triggered me to go do the research and find out what's doing. That's how I ended up with the one with the Judaic Philatelic Society put out that sheetlet, which included Anne Frank and the synagogue stamp, as you can see on there. So once you and you got to follow. I try to follow new issues, see what comes out, go through them.
My guest is Harvey Wolinetz, and he wrote this this wonderful book, and it's called An International Postage Tour of Synagogues. Now, Harvey, so let me ask you, did you love history when you were going to school?
Once years ago, I loved school when I was going to school.
No, did you love the history part of schools? Some people.
I don't know. I always loved to travel. I always loved to see new things. And when we traveled, I always went to the synagogues, wherever we went, things like that. So that always helped. And I have some pictures of me and my daughter and went to some of the synagogues. In the book, I put it in, personalized a little bit. But only if there was a connection to the stamps. There had to be a connection. I was very lucky because my synagogue in Israel that I go to, where I live in Israel when I'm there, is in the book. Why is it in the book? Not because I go to it, but because we had somebody in the synagogue, Esther, I'll get your name afterwards, who made a parochis, an ark cover. The Israeli government put that ark cover on one of their stamps.
Oh, how beautiful.
And
that's not in the book, is it?
Oh, it sure is.
Oh, I have to find that I have to find that. What page is that on? Well, anyway, I'll find it later, but now that's really important. So she put it on the cover of the, and they made a stamp out of it.
They made a stamp out of it. They put out a series of stamps, the 3 or 4 stamps of synagogue with ark covers. One of them was one from my shul, and therefore I was able to put it in, and then have it in there. Let's see what page it was. 136.
So people really sent these postcards. These were real postcards that people could mail to people.
The stamps were real, sure.
Yeah.
Well, B'nai B'rith put out a whole series of about 60 postcards that they mailed. They weren't mailed. I didn't care. Because look, I have to have some kind of reference, and I wanted philatelically used. I stretched a little bit with B'nai B'rith, but all the ones that I showed in the book were used. They mailed them out as part of the series. Each postcard was a different synagogue, and it worked out very, very nicely. So for that, I was very, very happy.
I was going to count before I had you on this interview, Harvey, how many synagogues are shown in here, and I forgot to do it.
300. A little over 300.
A little over 300.
That's on the stamps. That's besides the postmarks and other things and things representing the synagogues. So yeah, there was, and I guess one of the big ironies is you got a bunch of synagogues from the Arab countries. They put out synagogue stamps.
They did.
Yep.
Now that's interesting.
That
says something.
Because wherever the Jews were, they became part of a community. Even if they didn't like, but they were always contributed to the community.
Yeah.
If you go to page 91 in the book,
Okay.
it's
Okay.
about the Arab world.
I mean, this is so heavy. I have to tell people, you'll want to buy this book because it's a forever book. You need to pass it down.
I made sure that it was
91, the Arab world.
Made sure that it was technical enough so that stamp collectors could have it as a reference book with everything they need to know. And it could be a coffee table book for people to enjoy reading a little bit at a time. And it's a good coffee table book. You see, you've got Tunisia, Iraq. Imagine Iraq putting out a synagogue stamp.
Right. Well, it wasn't always, I think, the way it is today.
Well, it isn't that Iraq put it out, but it's on a cover, an Israeli cover, the cachet. But you have Egypt, I believe, for sure put out the stamp.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else we have here.
Yeah, they're very important to have the stamps from other countries that that. So now, interesting. So as you're looking for this, my question, in the United States, what is the most famous synagogue?
Probably one of the most famous ones around, Touro Synagogue now.
The what?
Touro Synagogue in Rhode Island, which is still in existence, which is still functioning.
Really? In Rhode Island?
Rhode Island.
Amazing.
I was there. I have a picture. As a matter of fact, included in the book is a picture of me and my daughter, Rena, standing in front of that synagogue.
I'm gonna go look up that one. There were so many, and I can't remember all of them.
No, but you can look it up in the index.
Yeah, I will. I'll look in the index. So I'm sure you've had a lot of scholars looking at this book and having conversations with them, haven't you?
Not yet. I haven't had a lot of feedback yet. You know, we're in difficult times now. I would normally gone out and lectured in synagogues. Nobody's coming out to lecture these days. They don't want to come out. And the bookstores say nobody's coming into the bookstores. What are you going to do holding your book? So, tough time.
But you're in New York now. Maybe you'll be able to do something there because they've opened up a lot of things. The museums are open, I think.
But I tell you, to me, the major thing was that I wrote the book and I learned from it. So
yes.
Everything else.
And it's a forever situation, Harvey. You know, there are people who retire and they eat lunch, they eat breakfast, they eat dinner, they play cards. You've done something that I am so proud to be able to represent for you. You know, here you are, Harvey Wolinetz. You did something it's monumental. This isn't just a book. I review a lot of books, but when I first talked to you and met you, I raved about this. I told you that. I've been doing this for many years, but I've never seen a book like this ever. And took a lot of work. This wasn't something you could just fluff over. And I'm, and with my capacity as a gerontologist, it will keep you young.
If you want to look at page 416.
Okay.
I
sure hope people will get this book. I just 416. Okay, I'm here. All right, 416. Okay, I got it. Oh, there you are.
That's my daughter, Rena.
With your daughter.
She's an attorney.
Author and his daughter, Rena. Right. Look at that. Isn't that something? Now, okay, now the picture on the right is a very high steeple.
Right.
What's at the top of the steeple?
It looks like birds flying around, I think, in that picture.
Yeah, right.
An 1896 building.
Wow, isn't that something? Wow. Yeah, it's and if you took the time, as you said, it takes time. You need a magnifying glass and you need to go over every single picture to really gain the beauty. I mean, this is an art book. It's a stamp collector's book, but it's an art book.
And I tried to be both without
that's what you did. And we talked about the man in Israel who was your graphic designer. What is his name again?
Johnny Finkel.
Yeah. Well, he has to really be congratulated
he did
because this was not. Will you see him when you go there now? Is he there? Yeah. Will you tell him that?
2 weeks on the phone. We have to go over now. We have to review the synagogue with the other book on the Arab-Israeli conflict because we're at the end of the road already. Start getting. I mean, we had initial printing, a preliminary printing by the publisher already, by the printer. but now it's being revised and reset and repaginated.
Sure.
So we're working on it. And there are a
I
lot. I
can't
tell you, it's amazing
imagine.
it's amazing if you look further, especially in America, in the section that you're in now in the United States.
Yeah.
You who thinks there's a big synagogue in South Dakota?
Right. I
But
mean, I know that when I saw some of those things, what is it doing in South Dakota? But
Jews were
there's
there.
always a community everywhere, somewhere, right?
Yep, that's correct.
And as you said, when they move there, the synagogue is like the community. They have to have the synagogue.
I guess the ultimate proof, unfortunately, is that when the Jewish community was attacked, the first thing to go was the synagogue. That's where they went after, because that was a symbol of the Jewish community.
Of course. So that's what you were saying. Right.
But the
Well, you know,
architecture buildings is absolutely magnificent. It's beautiful. Some of them are National Historic Sites. The Touro Synagogue in Rhode Island is a National Historic Site. So,
yeah.
You
know, I tell you what I remember when I've seen a lot of the movies with the Nazis and the Holocaust, and even when the Jews were sitting there in their own little area of horror, they had their Friday night services, and that was their little temple right there where they were. I mean, that was very poignant.
Right.
I always remember that.
Yep, that's true. Very true.
But here, yeah. So anyway, so let's get back to the pages. Now, there's one, I just remembered this. I want to go to page 200, where it's in Germany, where you really got all those now, were they all torn down? Are any of them still there now? Oh, pages after pages after pages.
I think nearly all of these were torn down or burned down.
They've all been torn down.
And these all depict here. If you look at the page 198, there's a set of 12 envelopes.
Yep.
And each envelope contacted 6 different labels.
Just going to show everybody this.
Each depicting a destroyed synagogue. 72 synagogues. Probably most of them were destroyed on Kristallnacht, that night of the.
Okay, but you have the pictures of them.
Yes.
Maybe it's nowhere else to be seen but in your book.
Well,
is that
these
possible?
originals are probably in a museum collection somewhere, maybe in Germany, possibly. But yes.
Well, if something's destroyed, I mean, okay.
No, with the pictures they have.
So this,
look,
yeah.
They have all these. There's a whole collection of wooden synagogues, the real synagogue, the wood synagogues that they have models of. They're all destroyed. The Nazis burned all down. They burned them all down. But there were models of them that exist that are in the museums in Israel. So.
No kidding.
Yeah, to that extent, we're fortunate.
Yeah, that is great. Well, as and I'm going to show everybody the book again because you'll see, it's a whole, it just quickly shows this, but this is the book. You ought to buy this book, The Synagogue Stamps, an International Postage Tour of Synagogues by Harvey D. Wolinetz, because it is a forever book. This is the kind of thing you want to pass on to your family, to friends who come over, and even people who aren't Jewish. It's so interesting just to sit here and look through this, and you will learn a lot. But in South Florida, we do have a very large Jewish population, and whether you're in B'nai B'rith or any of the other organizations, wouldn't this be a nice thing to have Harvey speak to you? Now he's up in New York.
I'm down in Florida.
What?
And I'm down in Florida most of the winter.
Right. I was just going to say that. Right now he's not, but in the winter you could ask him to come, and he's willing to do that. He's not going to charge you. He'll bring his book. He'll bring a few books. I think every household ought to have this. Their kids ought to see this. This is a wonderful lesson for their children.
It's designed as a reference book and as a coffee table book.
Yes.
So.
It is. It's very attractive. That's a good point. It is a reference book, a history book, and you want to put it on your table, your coffee table, or some place where people sit around a couch, and they're going to pick it up. They really are. So tell me what your grandchildren think about the book. How old are your grandchildren?
Well, let me put it this way. I'm waiting for a great-grandchild shortly.
Yeah. Right.
So I have
But
5 grandchildren already. I have
oh,
3 great-grandchildren already, thank God. And the 4th
ah,
one is on the way in Israel, so we'll see.
right.
So they like it.
Oh, I'm sure they're proud of that, right?
I
They
hope so.
can't take it to school though for show and tell casually because it's pretty heavy.
Well, depends. If they need
Right.
it, I'll be able to do it for them.
You could go with them and you could, their
Yeah,
grandfather could come
I don't
there
have
and
I don't
talk
have a.
about their book.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the interiors. You don't, we see them in a picture, but what were the interiors of the temples like?
Well, what I did, the layout of the book is set up as follows: that for every synagogue that's discussed, if possible, I put a picture of the exterior and the interior, and then go to the stamp. So if you look at the beginning of every synagogue, you'll see interior, exterior, exterior, interior, to show what it's about. Now, the question was about the interior. The interior
Yes.
depends on the architect. I mean, there were certain things that were fixed. The direction was fixed, always faced east towards Jerusalem. The ark was always in the front. And Penn was a Reform synagogue, Orthodox synagogue that give you a lot on the inside, the interior layout. There's a separate men's section, separate women's section, balcony for women. So it depended, but it was, but some were just magnificently done. Even if you take a look at the Tunisian stamp, Tunisia put out a stamp for a synagogue in Greba, page 93, 92, 93. It's a beautiful
I'm going
synagogue.
there.
The stamp shows you the interior of the synagogue.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Yeah. You know, and I know you can't do this, but I'm sure if you could, you would go visit a lot of those synagogues all over the world.
I'd love to go.
I know you would.
You know, you get older, you travel a little bit less. So,
I
but
know,
it's okay. There are a
but
lot of
you've
nice
done a
things.
lot.
I
No,
enjoy
it's
it.
great. I do have a question. What's the difference in a temple and a synagogue? I always have been using the word temple rather than synagogue because, like, a lot of their names are temple, a Sinai temple, this temple, that. They don't call
I think
themselves synagogue
I think
something.
Temple tends to lean more towards the conservative and reform movements than the
Oh,
Orthodox movement.
really?
I believe so. So it doesn't make it so, and it may not be absolute, but by and large, I think the reformed and possibly some of the conservative got away from the word synagogue in order to differentiate a bit.
I see. Because those are the names I know when I went in Miami, it was temple this, temple that, right? I see. So that's what that happens. Okay, now let's talk about who actually makes the stamps. Because do they have a postal center in every city where there was?
Every country in the world has a postal system. Some of them will
Really?
print stamps themselves, and some maybe they sublet it out. I don't know, but by and large, they do their own printing, or they sub it out to a printer who prints the stamp for that postal service because it's a government document. This is an official document. That's what makes it so. If the country puts out a stamp, they can't say, and they put out stamps showing how an Israeli synagogue or the Western world, you can't say, oh, we don't like Israel. You put out a stamp in their honor. Official document.
Right. But you know, Harvey, it's been wonderful talking to you. And we always wonder what we're going to talk about, but I always know there'll be plenty. And even though now this is our second interview, I would like when you go to Israel, let me know, and we'd love to have you have an interview there in Israel. Would you contact me and I would give you another interview? Would you do that?
Sure.
You
I'll let
might
you
even have your graphic designer with you. That would be fun.
know. That would be very nice.
Okay, so let me know. Have a very safe trip.
I'm
I
making a note. I'm
appreciate it. I learned.
not going till September, but we'll see. I may go earlier just to review the book with him face to face. I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
See what happens. But thank you very, very much. I appreciate your help.
Oh,
And
it's
if
always
anybody
a
wants to order
pleasure.
the book, they should order it. They can order it through Amazon. They could order it by contacting me directly. I'll do a little bit better price-wise. danwall4311@gmail.com.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, I'm going to make sure that this interview will be on. We're going to send this out to everyone else. And Dan will put those numbers for you, how to contact you. But thank you. Please, safe
Thank
travels.
you very, very much. Be well.
Yeah,
Take
it
care.
was always a pleasure being with you. Thank you so
very,
much,
very much.
Harvey.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Goodbye.